there's no secrets between these teams, the coaches. Like,
Hmm.
it just ends up kind of being a chess match, and it's who makes the right move when.
Joining us for a second time on the show, she's a women's hockey writer for the USCHO, co-host of the podcast, and the editor-in-chief of the Victory Press, an independent sports publication that covers women's hockey, among other sports. Since joining us last time, she was a contestant on Jeopardy, but maybe even more impressive and certainly more important, she recently won Heated Rivalry bar trivia. It's Nicole Haase. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, first, we have to start with Heated Rivalry because you posted a photo from trivia, and I'm wondering what the toughest question you got that you're pretty sure most everyone else didn't get.
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I did like two in one weekend, and one was super hard and one was pretty easy. I think honestly, the first one, nobody got any of the sports questions. They did a real sports round. So they wanted to know like the original six
Oh my
NHL
gosh.
teams and things like that. The name
I
of the
love that.
trophy, nobody knew any of those. Yeah.
Okay, so you got to bring your excellence in
Yes.
actual sport and fictional sport. Yeah, I noticed that there was a picture round of naked butts and abs, and I'm wondering if you went 10 for 10 on that.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I would say 90% of them, we didn't even have a question, and then there were a couple,
Yeah.
there was one that was Kip, who was obviously not naked on screen very long, that we had a quick
Yes.
discussion on. It was honestly hilariously sort of, like, technical. We're like, "Oh, I think that's the plant in Scott's apartment." So, it was yeah.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, so funny. I like to quote this line every time I have the chance because it cracked me up so bad. They said on Jocular that Ilya Rozanov's ass is actually looking at you. Like, you're not looking at that ass. It is looking at you.
And I'm
And I
okay
have
with
to
it.
agree.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I welcome it. Also Jeopardy, tell us about that. Was it
Yeah.
everything you ever dreamed?
It was, yes, it all happened very fast. I took the very first test, like, and within 3 or 4 months was taping the episodes, so there was sort of no time to, really think about it or overthink it, so that was nice, and, they do 5 episodes taping in a day, and so you get to see all the other episodes that go out in a week, and I got the only sports category, so, that is the win for me. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then there was a JJ Watt reading a question about, Reggie White. So and I was against a guy that won a bunch, so he was very quick on the buzzer, but I still got in. I got several of the sports questions, but particularly as a Wisconsin girl, they wouldn't have let me come home if I didn't get that.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's a life dream of mine, so sometime I'll have to actually apply myself and actually, try to get in. Okay, you're actually here to talk hockey, not butts and Jeopardy, as fun as that is. And you joined us last year right around this time ahead of the Frozen Four. It was exceedingly helpful getting us ready ahead of those contests. So we're going to do that again. But before we get to what to expect from this weekend, I do want to back up just a little bit and talk about the impact that the Olympics had on this season of college hockey. Because unlike in years past, this year the US and Canada did not centralize their national teams because all those post grad players could get in lots of competition in the PWHL. But that decision did mean that college players also stayed in school instead of taking Olympic redshirt seasons and going to centralization camps. So, how do you think that actually impacted those players when it comes to their Olympic preparation?
I actually think it was good for them in that they were all very comfortable where they were, right? They had regiments. The players we're talking about are at, very large universities. Oh, so they have nutrition plans and cafeterias and sort of all of what they need from start to finish. And I think particularly for ones that maybe had thought about going pro in that year with an expansion, which we now know has turned out great, but you didn't know that going in. So I think for them, it was about like staying in the system that you know and you're comfortable and you know that you have all the resources that you need. So from a player perspective, I think that it was probably the best prep they could have in that situation. Because of the comfort level. If they were learning a new team or if, things had happened, however it went down with the draft and the P-Dub, I think there would have been sort of more questions and answers for them. As far as the season, it was weird.
Yeah, I was gonna say for, the absence of those Olympic players on the college teams that didn't take a break because the PWHL paused,
Right.
but the college season didn't.
No, and they were basically gone they were gone throughout the season to do some of the camps, and then they were gone essentially as the season wound out. So, like, could not have been more of a crucial time, for that. And then, yeah, it was mostly that you saw a lot of short rosters. Like they only get to have so many girls on the team. And if you're sending 5, 6, 7 girls between, because we're not just talking North American players, but obviously like players that play in Finland, Sweden, things like that. And so you're talking some short rosters, and then you're just talking players that don't normally get, top line minutes suddenly be thrust to those roles, top power play, all of that sort of stuff. So it probably had a bigger impact on the teams back home. And then a thing that in all of sort of our talking about this in the last year, sort of hypothesizing what would be an issue, it seems like reentry or sort of everybody reacclimating was a bigger
Mhm.
concern or a bigger problem, because you had this team that sort of gelled while those players were gone and took on new roles, and you named new captains, because in many places the captain is the Olympian that left.
Yeah, who's gone?
And then when the players came back, I think trying to find those roles again and the chemistry that they had before the players left was really difficult. I think you're asking players that really took on bigger roles to take a step back again, and I think that's hard. And then the players coming back, how did they fit back in? And again, we did that, and they went right into the playoffs, and so it just was a high pressure situation. And yeah, it's been interesting. I think it probably went about as good as it could have, considering nobody knew what to expect. And the teams
Right.
that were missing the most are some of the teams that are here this weekend. So I think they
They
could
powered
make,
through.
yeah, you could make complaints, but
Yeah.
ultimately it didn't change their trajectory.
Yeah, to that point, Wisconsin had 5 Olympians, 4 of them US, so at least 4 of them were playing together, although not on the Wisconsin team. They were playing over with Team USA. Ohio State had 5, Penn State 3, and Northeastern had the 1, friend of the show, Alessia Beckler. So we're excited to see Alessia coming up in the Frozen Four. Okay, final Olympic question for you. You were pretty vocal on social media about the quality of the commentary during the games. We were watching a lot of the games in person, so we didn't get as much of the TV experience as so many others did. What would you say irked you most about what you heard?
I am a staunch hardliner that I don't think we should call women defensemen. I just think it's a really simple and easy
I don't
change.
either. Yeah.
And I get told like the players don't mind, and I'm like, well, we could go into a whole like hockey culture thing, and like particularly, I think
Mm.
the same hockey culture BS that came out from the men's team, like this is a product of that same thing. These are
Mhm.
many women who came through the same process. But yeah, it's a hard line thing for me. It's the same. They don't have to be linesmen; they can be linespersons. There's a lot of very
Mhm.
male centric terminology, and AJ Malesko particularly, but also Angela Ruggiero are just really hardcore about sticking with the use of that word. And it really, really bugs
Mhm.
me and irks me. But also I think that we should get actual play-by-play and insight during a hockey game, which I know sounds groundbreaking, apparently, but there would just be long stretches. I mean, there's even further complaints about what they were talking about instead, but just seriously, tell me about the game. Like, AJ knows the game.
Yeah.
She could be telling people so much stuff, and we just get, side conversations about really dumb things. But fundamentally, the problem there is that you're not helping people understand the game anymore. You're not breaking down a
Yeah.
play. And we've been getting the same stuff since, I mean, I've been covering women's college hockey since 2006. And a lot of these conversations
Right.
haven't changed in those 20 years. So it's like, goodness, at some point you have to stop.
You're saying that the audience doesn't know enough to elevate it, but if you never try to elevate it, they won't know more. And
Yeah.
there's a certain respect for audience where you can bring them along with you and make sure you're doing your best to simplify it in a way that they'll get, but also they'll get up to the standard of what you're talking about if they're interested, and they don't have a chance to if you don't try, which can be frustrating for sure. Okay, so Frozen Four gets underway this weekend. Penn State is hosting semifinals on Friday, championship game on Sunday. So semifinal number 1, we got number 1 Ohio State versus number 5 Northeastern. Give us a little scouting report on each of those teams.
Sure, Ohio State, obviously number one team going in. Wisconsin was the number one team for more than a year in the polls. And when Ohio State beat Wisconsin in the conference championship game they play in the WCHA, uh, they became the number one team. So they took over in the polls, and the NPI, which is the math that NCAA uses to rank the teams. Ohio State, led by Joy Dunn, obviously Olympian. Also Hilda Svensson, who is a Swedish Olympian. She's probably going to be Rookie of the Year. She was WCHA Rookie of the Year. She leads all rookies. I think she's second in points despite having missed a bunch of games because she was at the Olympics for rookies. And she's seventh among all skaters as a rookie. Just really having an amazing breakout season. Ohio State has often played 2 goalies throughout a season, and this year Haley McLeod has taken the whole season, and so she set a bunch of records. So she's been really good and interesting. But yeah, they are, they're a powerhouse. They have played for, what is it, the last 4 national championships. Wisconsin and Ohio State has
Mhm.
won the last several national championships.
Mhm.
And Ohio State lost in heartbreak. Like last year's national championship game is one of the best hockey games I've ever watched in my life. And Ohio State was winning until the final couple seconds, took a penalty, gave up a penalty shot, and then lost in overtime. And that's a team that prides itself, like they are able to motivate by having a little chip on their shoulder. Um, and so that would be the case anyway. And then they lost in heartbreaking fashion. And so that has, I'm certain,
Back with a
driven
vengeance.
things, yeah, all year long, right? And so beating Wisconsin in that championship game and then taking the top #1 seed, I think is definitely a motivating factor for them. Um, they had probably the team that adapted the most to the Olympians being gone. It was kind of didn't skip a beat, and they're the team that was the most shorthanded. They were skating with, like, 4 or 5 defenders and 8 forwards, just crazy numbers. And they are incredibly disciplined, incredibly well, like, their fitness is crazy, so they were gonna be like that anyway, and then, like, being so shorthanded, they play really, aggressive forecheck. They put a lot of pressure on, they take away time and space, and they're gonna force you to make mistakes. As for Northeastern, they obviously upset Minnesota last weekend, and which was a huge. They went into Minneapolis to get that win, scored 4 unanswered goals. It ended up being 4-2, but Minnesota scored twice on the power play towards the end of the game, and Northeastern went in there and just dominated. I thought it was a really impressive showing for them. This is their 4th Frozen Four. They have an amazing goalie, Lisa Jansson, who is Swedish. She's 6 foot tall. She's got a, 1.61 goals against average and just really good. They have the Hockey East Rookie of the Year and Player of the Year and Strikers the Blocky. And just, yeah, they really were a team that came into this season not necessarily on the radar. They had a kind of down year last year, and they just kind of took care of business this year. And so they're definitely on a roll. And I think I'm just not sure what we'll see from them, but I'm excited to see how they match up.
Strikers Zablocki of Saskatchewan is definitely tournament all-name team. Like, too good.
Yeah, and she has siblings with amazing, there's, like, a Steele, and yeah, the whole family has spectacular names, but I think Striker
Oh, I need to look up the
won.
rest of the names.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to look up the rest of that family. Yeah, so we will not just be watching Alessia on Northeastern. We'll also, of course, be watching Striker Zablocki of Saskatchewan. Okay, semifinal number 2. We got number 2 Wisconsin versus number 3 Penn State. Little scouting report on those teams.
Sure. Penn State has Tessa Janicki. Penn State is hosting, but this is a neutral site. Like they were named as a host 4 years ago. And Penn State has basically worked. They've hosted the tournament 4 years ago. Were not a top ranked team at the time and basically have done everything to make sure that they were in this tournament when they were hosting it again. They play in a somewhat less competitive conference. They've dominated that conference, but their win to get to the Frozen Four was their first ever NCAA win. So they've made the tournament a few times, but just hadn't gotten over that hurdle. So this is just a huge step for them. They're Tessa is all world. She's a finalist for the Patty Kazmaier top 3
Mhm.
finalist. But she's also, gotten a lot more help over the years. And I think it's a conversation about sort of like raising the level of play across the board, right? So it's not just what she's done, and they did plenty fine without her there. Grace Outwater, I think, led the league in points, and they have some really great defenders, Danica Maynard and Kendall Butsky. So they don't play top 10 teams in their conference. Whereas teams like Ohio State and Wisconsin are playing each other, and playing other ranked teams week to week. Penn State just doesn't get to do that. And so it'll be an abrupt sort of jump for them into this game. And then Wisconsin
Yeah.
defending national champions, as you mentioned, 4 gold medalists. And then, a player we expected to be on Team USA was Lacey Eden, and then she did not get named to the Olympic team. And she definitely took that personally, and really led the Badgers while the team was gone. And so
And
now
the nation, right? Scoring leader.
exactly, now leads the country
Mm.
in scoring with, I think it's 72 points. But also they have Caroline Harvey, also a Patty Kaz top 3 finalist, averages 2 points a game as a defender, one of only 2 players that averages 2 points a game, Abby Murphy being the other. But also Kristen Sims is 5th in the country in scoring. Cassie Hall's 10th in the country in scoring. Kelly Gorbatenko, who's a name that nobody outside college hockey knows, is one of the top goal scorers in the country. Like, there's just a depth there that few other teams can match. And then they also have Ava McNaughton, who was, the third string goalie for the Americans. Yeah, they're, looking to go back to back. That team feels like they missed out on going back to back because they lost 1-0 to Ohio State. And so that's been their sort of driving thing this
Yeah.
year. But they're losing. That's a major senior class. So this for them is like the swan song.
Yeah. You mentioned Kelly Gorbatenko had a hat trick in the semis, which was her second hat trick on the season. And you're right, like she's still not even top of the list for that team of their weapons, but she's really fantastic. I wanted to mention for Penn State, you mentioned how they are getting like a home game, even though it was technically a neutral site. It's their first Frozen Four. They
Yeah.
would be the 5th team to get to win it at home. They're 17-1 at home. So what a great opportunity for a team to make their first Frozen Four when it is the potential for a little home ice bump. And I also wanted to talk about their defense because you mentioned that they don't play as many great teams. So this probably is, a contributor to this fact, but they allow the fewest goals in the nation.
Right.
Their goaltender has the most shutouts in the nation. So
Right.
they are, potentially a team that could really just shut it down defensively and try to hang on and get a rogue goal and maybe surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is an easy game for Wisconsin by any means. I do think that the depth is going to be the factor for that. I think, if you see scoring from Wisconsin's third or fourth line, that's trouble for Penn State. But I think, particularly top line to top line. Again, I think the speed of the game will be something there. And I think that it's very difficult to prepare for that. It's something Quinnipiac said, which is who Wisconsin beats to get to this point in their quarterfinal. Just like you can't prepare for that. There's no way to practice to get you used to it. And so if you are used to time and space, which is when you get to make the pretty plays and the good passes and find your lanes and all that sort of stuff, if you don't get any of that, you have to be able to rely on your instincts and still play the type of game you want. And so, Wisconsin's going to want possession, and Penn State and Tessa is one of the best face-off takers in the country. Like, they're going to try and keep the puck from them, and that's going to be the key if Penn State's going to win this game.
You mentioned Wisconsin has been killing it last few years. Ohio State these have been the two teams. They've won the last 6 NCAA titles combined. Wisconsin 4 of them, Ohio State 2 of them. And they've gone head-to-head in the last 3. You mentioned last year it was Kristen Sims who got the penalty shot and raised her hand for it and said, I want this shot. I want to be the one with the pressure on. And then also goes on to get the game winner in overtime. It was a crazy game. What is it about this rivalry? If we do end up seeing those two in the final again, what is it about those two teams, and what would we want to watch for Sunday in that matchup if it happens?
What Ohio State did really well in the WCHA championship game 2 weeks ago, which, that's the great thing about this is they play each other so much. Like, there's no secrets between these teams, the coaches. Like, it just ends up kind of being a chess match, and it's who makes the right move when. But Ohio State puts so much pressure on. And so even though that's a thing that Wisconsin does and they're used to, they're a team that's used to controlling the puck and controlling the game. And so when you've got sort of those two forces hitting each other, it's who adjusts. In the end, it does not end up being pretty hockey necessarily because neither of them is allowed to play the game they want to play. So it's who handles, sort of the constant chippiness of like lifting sticks and 50-50 battles and bouncing pucks and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought Ohio State was so cool, calm, and collected, and they pushed Wisconsin off balance. And so I think that's really the key is sort of who handles the spread pressure and the spotlight. It's an interesting situation just because Ohio State has all this pressure on themselves to like make up for last year, but the Badgers have that huge senior class that they want to send out on top. And so, yeah, I think what you would be looking for is who has possession and how Wisconsin likes to be fast through the middle, particularly. Like, they want to move through that neutral zone so fast. And Ohio State was stepping to that and really stopping them from moving with any speed or getting anything going. And so that's sort of what you're looking for. If they're doing that and Wisconsin's not adjusting, which they should be able to do, and they didn't. And so, like, that's kind of concerning, right? Like, you knew this was coming. So if you see that, I think that is in Ohio State's favor. And if the Badgers are sort of moving the puck around them, and the thing I always like to say to people about women's hockey is like it's sort of the purest form of hockey in that like it's still physical, but you're not just blowing up a guy to get him off the puck in the center ice, right? So like it's very finesse. It's a very finesse game. Like they're passing, they're skating, right around people that make them look like they're standing still. So if Wisconsin is getting those passes
Mhm.
in and really like sort of weaving the puck around, then that means things are going well for them.
We talked about Penn State hosting. It's the second time they're getting this Frozen Four. Last time in 2022, attendance wasn't great. Hopefully that'll be different now that Penn State is in the mix. But do you have any sense of why they got this hosting bid again?
It is a great facility. You just like cannot deny like Pegula is a really great arena and it's a good size for it. Just generally we don't get huge crowds in women's hockey. The NCAA says that your building has to hold, I think it's either 4,000 or 4,500. And Ritter Arena in Minnesota is below that, but gets like grandfathered in because there's just only so many places. And like you don't want to play in it. In
Yeah.
like the Cole Center at Madison is like 18,000. You don't want to play in that, right? So there's only a certain number of arenas that just fit the mold. But yeah, the Pegula is a great arena. It's unfortunate that it's so difficult to come to Penn State for most everybody, right? Like it's kind
Mhm.
of in the middle of nowhere. Um, but yeah, I think it was a great tournament, and particularly in sort of these non-revenue sports, the NCAA prioritizes the student experience, and I think the student experience was very good. The facilities are great. They're not
Yeah.
put in 7 different buildings and having to walk all over the place. Like, there's enough locker rooms. Everything they need is right there, and so, yeah, I wish that, there's a lot of things I could have a whole episode just telling you about what I think the Frozen Four needs on the women's side, but, um, yeah, I'm hoping the attendance hasn't been great and attendance wasn't great for their quarterfinal that they hosted. Um, yeah. I wish they don't make it easy to get to, and then there's not associated fan events. Like there's no fan fest, there's no clinics, there's nothing like that.
Right.
And so to like get your family to come to State College is difficult, and then there's nothing here for you. So and it does,
Right.
yeah, does make it difficult.
Something to start working on in that space. Let's talk quickly the Patty Kazmaier Memorial Award. It's given annually to the top player in women's college hockey. It's going to be awarded on Saturday. You did extensive interviews with a bunch of players in the running for this, so you're truly a Patty Kaz expert. Were you a voter this year?
I was, yes.
Okay, great. So it's funny, they say finalists and then they narrow them down and label them
Some more
finalists
finalists. Yeah.
again, but there were like 10 finalists and now there are 3 final finalists that are Caroline Harvey, University of Wisconsin, Tessa Janicki, Penn State, and Abby Murphy, University of Minnesota. We talked about 2 of them that will be in this Frozen Four. Abby Murphy's Minnesota got upset by Northeastern, so she's done. We saw all of them for Team USA. Tell us what stood out to you about them during the NCAA season that maybe was different than what we saw at the Olympics.
Sure. I mean, for me, Caroline Harvey is probably the best defender in the world. So, I guess, that probably tells you how I feel about this, but I think there is KK changed the way that people are going to recruit and what they're going to expect from
Mm,
defenders in the women's game. Like just full on, there
mhm.
are coaches in every rink right now looking for the next KK. Just the skill set, the wide variety that you don't. Everyone focuses on what she can do on offense, but she's an incredible defender. You kind of just don't see it because it's very sort of like casual and easy, but she can push forward because she can recover and because she'll chase somebody down. So for KK, yeah, I think it's just about this sort of like overall and she's been one of the best players for several years, and every year she finds something else to add to her game. But yeah, she's the anchor for Wisconsin, and we listed several players that are in the tops in scoring, and yet she's still one of their biggest offensive threats. And I think too,
Mhm.
you cannot underestimate how much. So KK and Layla Edwards are basically best friends. They live together, and Layla switching to defense for Team USA very much was helped by being best friends. uh,
Yeah.
Layla and KK. So I just think like she's a tactician of the game. She sees it really well. She's a great teacher. She's a great captain. So sort of all those little bits that are maybe not so obvious off if you're just watching the game. Addie Murphy is the engine and was the engine at Minnesota for several years. She got more support in the last couple seasons, so she wasn't having to do it on her own. But the thing about Abby is everybody knows she's gonna get the puck. They know that she's what she's gonna do. Like she's not. I mean, she is occasionally busting out ridiculous moves, but like generally, her game hasn't
Yeah.
changed that much, and you're still not stopping her. But I think she just sort of elevated play with the Gophers around her. And I think I'd say the same about Tessa too. It's just um, for Tessa at Penn State wasn't a nationally ranked program 4 years ago. And she came, and it is not just the Tessa Janicki show. So she has truly elevated the level of play of everyone around her. And I think the intangible of what it means to get, like, when a player of that caliber comes to a program that doesn't normally get top caliber talent and hasn't. And again, we're not that far removed from Penn State joining D1. They didn't have a D1 women's program not
Mhm.
that long ago. It's probably way longer than I remember it being, but it's not that long ago. And so just what it means to set a new standard for what is expected from her teammates, from in the locker room, how you handle yourself, in every aspect of being a student athlete, I think is the thing that Tessa has done. And then also is just obviously spectacular on the ice. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think all three of them, there's a lot of intangibles that make them spectacular players beyond, and also they're really skilled on the ice, right?
Yeah. You mentioned Tessa, like in the classroom or everything else. We did talk about last year that the Patty Cast is supposed to take into account character and sportsmanship, who you are other than just a hockey player. Abby Murphy has developed a bit of a reputation for being a dirty player and not just talking about that filthy assist that went viral a few months ago, talking about other things. Do you think
Yeah.
that's held her back in Patty Cast consideration either this year or last?
Yes, I do. Having been in some conversations, I did 2 year stints on the committee. I was not on last year, but I was on the 2 years before that. So, and then this year, there are coaches that matters more to than others, and so it kind of just depends on who's on the committee and how much they take that into consideration. I mean, Tessa also has a ton of penalty minutes, and honestly, that isn't something anybody really talks about. So,
Uh-huh.
and KK has a streak in her too. She'll make a retributive hit on somebody as well. With Abby, yeah, I think it's, you love to hate her, right? You want her on your team. You don't want to play against her. And it's not about the antagonism. It's the more dirty play that people are really concerned about. And I think it just depends
Yeah.
on, for the voters, whether that's something that concerns them or not. And also, I would say that
Yeah.
people, I think,
Fair
too, just
enough.
think her numbers have gotten better. Like, she clearly has worked to not be doing, like, she doesn't have hundreds of minutes this year. So I
Yeah.
don't like, uh, yeah.
Baby steps. Well, it sounds like we know where your vote went for the Patty Kaz. I know we're not supposed to ask for predictions from reporters types like you who are breaking down the Frozen Four, but if you had a gut feeling for who might come out on top this year.
The most consistent team has been Ohio State. I think if Wisconsin plays at their best, it is a coin flip. It's like going into a gold medal game with US Canada. But they have had plenty of slip ups, and the team that is consistently, no matter who is on the ice, no matter what injuries, anything like that, has come out and sort of done their business and played their game through and through as Ohio State. So I think that it's probably their game to lose, but I can't imagine that if it comes down to Wisconsin and Ohio State, that we don't see overtime and we don't see
Yeah.
some more craziness. I think that Wisconsin steps up to the plate, right? Like, you're in that position, you have those players. I don't think you see the slip ups we've seen some of the times, but yeah, I think gonna get yelled at by a ton of Wisconsin people, but I think it's
No,
probably
you said coin flip. Yeah. So you gave a little nudge to Ohio State.
55-45 or whatever,
It's
right?
anyone's. Exactly. It's anyone's game. We do love a coin flip and we do love some overtime. So here's hoping you're right. Thanks as always, Nicole. Appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me.